Hey, Chris, good morning. Welcome, everybody. This
Good
is
morning.
James and Chris, and we are kicking off webinar number 3 for the Growth Multiplier series. And today's topic is a fantastic topic. It's about taking the lead by developing your culture. And Chris is going to lead us through that presentation today, or that discussion today, and then we'll have a deeper discussion on the topic. Are you ready, Chris?
I'm as ready as I can be. We'll talk about this at the end, hungover from yesterday. A good way, teaching hungover. But
Right.
it's going to be a blast. And just as some context for Jimmy and I, Growth Multipliers, about the journey of transformation you can go on with your leadership and organization. We both have been obsessed with how organizations and leaders grow and develop. And so here we are, excited to be here, man.
Yeah. It's going to be a good topic. So, Chris, you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah. You want me to kick off now?
Introduce us to the topic, what you're going to cover, and let's rock and roll, man.
Right on,
Can't wait
right
to
on.
hear.
Well, for me, I've spent 2 decades now reading all I can on leadership and development. And what's been sad to me is to find how many definitions exist out there of culture. What's agreed upon universally is that culture's important. Now, people may rank it differently. I like Peter Drucker's quote. I think it's so powerful that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So
Right.
yes, you need this essential key strategy, but the culture needs to work symbiotic with it rather than against it. A lot of people, I think,
Right.
misunderstand that quote so that they so value culture. It's like strategy doesn't matter. We know strategy is critical. In fact, I know in our fourth session together, you're going to run with the ball on that and have a blast. But we want to get that foundation of culture dialed in so it amplifies all the hard work we put into the strategy. Now, where there's not a lot of agreement is what makes up a culture. And there's a lot of definitions out there. And I tend to think through things in a way that a definition doesn't matter if it doesn't translate into action and practice.
Right.
So I've wrestled with what it means to understand a culture definition that is action based. And to start that off, it's really, for me, powerful just to acknowledge that culture changes every day, every moment. Something's happening. And if we can own that, feel that, accept that reality, then we'll stop making that fatal flaw that so many leaders make, which is I'm going to reach a finish point in my culture work. I
Right.
cast that vision. I told that story. I got them to believe that value. Aren't we done yet?
We wrote
And
it down. It's in my desk drawer. Can we move on now? Yeah.
yeah, it's painted on the wall. When you guys going to stop asking that question? And what makes me think about that is when I was in college, I worked at a concrete construction job. And fast forward a few years, I'm married and I have a leadership job with a lot of intangibles. I'm leading a team of people. I think at the time I had anywhere from 7 to 12 direct reports for a number of years. The work was never finished. You're never finished as a leader. That's part of the challenge. And even though I'm doing that work, I would drive by a parking lot with my wife and I would point to it and go, I helped pave that parking lot. Now, why am I bragging about this parking lot in the midst of this other work that I'm doing? Because it was something I could point to that I've finished.
Right.
And the hard part that we have to accept as culture builders is that we're never finished. And so I like to just start people with an awareness that the first action we're taking is to just accept the culture as it is. If we understand it's dynamic, it's not static. It doesn't matter what I wish the culture was. It doesn't matter what the culture was yesterday. What is it in this moment? It's this flowing river, and we're just taking a snapshot of it. So as much as you could feel good, and I hope that the heart of what I'm saying comes across, and I don't mean anything sexist by this. It's just male female differences, stereotypical, not always, but as much as a male might feel good in his relationship with his wife, and then something changes, right? This river's moving. And it's the insecure male that thinks I should be able to get all this taken care of. I have to tell
I'll
you this
fix
because last
this.
night my wife and I celebrated 20 years, and it was really
Congratulations.
awesome. Thank you. So yeah, we're hanging out and eating, and I just was talking about with the crisis that we have in the world, how everything is behind. And I think it's like family law alone is going to take 2 years to catch up as is. Of course, they're going to have to innovate their way through it. I was like, can you imagine the heartache of families that are going through these hard moments and they can't, you know, get what they need? And
Mm,
she goes, I feel like if you and I were in that spot, we would work through it in a good way and like do what's best for each other and the kids. And I'm like, that's why we're still together.
right.
No shame on anybody, because not all marriages make it, and I don't mean to stir up any pain with that, but it's just an acknowledgement that for two people to stay together, it's a continual going, who are you today? Where are you? You change. Yeah, we change. Culture changes. And so the first action that we have to take is, I accept this culture where it is. I don't need my ego, the insecurity of who I am, to make this culture something different than it is. I accept it. It's this. Now let's go on, build it, improve it. And if we're going to do that, we can go to the next action. And I'm putting the word focused up there because once I accept the reality of the culture as it is, then I can ask myself this question: where do we need to go? That's leaders. They know they want to go somewhere and they're going to take people with them. And so it doesn't matter whether it's a family, a team, a culture at a large organization, there has to be somebody filling the room with values, with direction, with strategy, with vision. And if that's not happening, there's misalignment, there's confusion. But the reason misalignment and confusion happens, even in places when vision, values, and strategy have been communicated, is because somebody thinks they reached a finish line. They
Right.
falsely believed that culture was static. And they sat down and they're like, I just did a meeting with all my direct reports one-on-one. I went through all the vision and the values and the strategy. Checkbox done. Yeah, and guess what? All of that has to be done again tomorrow. Maybe not in the same way from a time requirement, but they forgot everything. And it's the nature of vision that it drifts. And because vision drifts, we come back to it every day. A healthy leader is boringly consistent on communicating vision, values, and strategy. They're creatively compelling in how they do it. They learn to tell stories to win hearts. They motivate people, but they don't acquiesce and say, this is just going to take care of itself. Because vision drifts, it makes me think of something Jack Welch used to talk about. And I know there's been some critique of his leadership at GE, that did he really grow it, or did he just lead it into sophisticated financialization? And I really don't want to
Right.
weigh in on that, because I think he carried a giant leadership burden, right? What was it, at peak over 100,000 workers, something crazy. And he was the kind of person who understood this burden, because he said, until I'm throwing up at what I'm saying, they haven't heard it. And that is a great reminder. I've used that quote with teams over the years. Like, hey guys, I know you all feel sick of talking about this again. Guess what? Until we're throwing up, they're not hearing it. And it's our job
Mm.
to keep coming back to that over and over and over, because the focus gets lost. This is just normal. I was
Chris, is
with,
that if I
go ahead.
can I
No,
interrupt
go
you for a
ahead.
moment?
Yeah.
Is that what is I've heard you've heard me say, and I've heard other folks say, this idea that we want to live it as well as talk about it. So is that something that can help in this area? Are we finding that when people is there a difference between talking about it and actually living it and providing people the experience of it? Did Jack have to say it over and over again until he was throwing up because he wasn't practicing it, or because it wasn't manifesting itself in other ways other than spoken word? How would you weigh in
Oh,
on that?
beautiful question. Love that. Well, I would say he could have not been living it. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Right.
But two stories that accentuate this. I remember one time I was in with this company, and they had their values painted on the wall, kept emphasizing them through print like that. And I sat in a few meetings, and a completely different set of values was championed by the CEO over and over and over again. He said three things over and over again that were different than what was on the wall. Then in his own schedule and choices he made, it was a different set of values. So, he
Wow.
kind of had entrepreneurial lifestyle values that he was living out, but he was communicating corporate, kill ourselves for the job values. And then on the wall was painted some aphorisms, and so what you see over and over is that's not an uncommon scenario, that there's at least a set of communicated values and a set of uncommunicated values. Sometimes there's two sets of uncommunicated values. And what is so distraught to healthy cultures is they can't find their way in that because that congruence isn't there, that alignment. So yeah, it's possible that that was happening with Jack, but I would also say that it's people's brains. They have such a short time frame. This isn't demeaning to people. This is just how we all are. I mean, how many times am I hearing something that I'm not really that interested in? And I say back to my kids, "Oh, I'm sorry. What were you saying again?" No, no, it does happen even with them. I mean, people you love, and I've just learned to call myself out on it and go, wait. Can you say that again? I stopped listening here. But it makes me think of it in a meeting with a group, and we're walking out, and this guy pulls out his phone, right? And if the meeting's in person, for sure this is happening. You better believe in the virtual meeting world this is happening. As soon as the meeting's over, there's one device they're going straight to, their phone. And as they go to their phone, if something neutral is there, their brain isn't getting crowded out. But if something maximal is there, and a perfect example, we were walking on this meeting, this guy pulls out his phone and he looks at his phone, and I noticed there's a Tinder app there, notification. And it was so funny to me, Jimmy, because I'm like, they just put all that time and money into that meeting. I mean, when you think, in a meeting, what's the money that's in the room? The hourly rate times how many ever people are there. So it's not blank an hour, it's times 15 or whatever. The money that was spent on that. And you pull your phone out and you look at your Tinder app notification, the evolutionary pull of biology crowds out however good you think that initiative was, over and over and over again. And so I think if a leader carries the mantle, it's my job to tell stories and win hearts. Yes, you can do it so effectively that you don't have to beat a drum that bores people. You're boringly consistent in vision, values, and strategy, but you're creatively compelling in the way that you talk about it. You're finding new ways to do it. You're taking out your phone and you're sending an audio note to your executive team and telling them a story about something that happened, and you're just reinforcing that value. Because if they're not hearing it from you, vision drifts. They're lost. And if they're not focused, then you can't make it to the next one. Unified, where relationships are really tested. Because once you start setting direction, you're giving something for people to react to. It's one thing to say, let's have a great place to work. Yeah, let's have a great place to work. Hey, let's have a great place to work. Here's what it means to have a great place to work. Boom, boom, boom. And somebody goes, well, I don't want that. Okay, well, now we know. That's good. It may mean you got to go. It may mean you stay, and we need to incorporate what you're saying because it's going to round us out and make us more whole. But I like to just emphasize this is a non-forced unity. It's a non-forced unity. Instead, voluntary. What I mean is, yeah, exactly. People have to choose this out of desire. We wrestle with it in meetings. But for all the people that would watch this, the throngs of millions of people, no, for all the people that would watch this and say, yeah, but you know what? We got a killer onboarding sequence at our company. We got it dialed in. Well, that's important. That's great. But it makes me think of when my daughter had a sleepover. She's 14 now, our youngest. She's our third. When she was about 8 or 9, my wife motioned me over to her room. They were in there sleeping. They'd, had this sleepover, and she opened the door, and there were chip crumbs and chip bags and like pop cans, like some kind of elementary bender happened. And, that would have never happened with our first 2 kids because they had the vision. You can go have a party in the kitchen with the food and the drink. Just clean it up, right? But it got lost because vision drifts. You're your third hire away from losing the culture you value so much. And once that happens, you got to keep taking people back to it. And once you take people to it or keep taking people back to it, it creates the context for disunity. And so, yeah, the non-forced unity means we agree together on where we're headed. Not everybody has to like that direction or value. But if we can agree together, we can pay a great price for a powerful vision. We're motivated to do that. And we're actually going to deepen our relationship in the challenge and pain of mission. I'm closest in my life to people. The deepest bonds of community I have are where there's a shared mission. If there's no shared mission, the bonds of community aren't going to go as deep. And this is where you learn that. It's not just learning it to live it out. It's the joy of it. I mean, Jimmy, you know how lonely are so many leaders, the leaders we connect with, how much they long for community. And it's because they often haven't learned how to build a healthy culture, and it takes relational
Mm,
work.
mm.
And I mean, that
So,
fires me up. Go ahead.
well, it sounds like one of the things you're talking about is maybe translating part of what the leader can do is create enough consistency to make the values and the vision habitual. There's got to be some maybe habit that's formed where at first it may be taught, but over time I've done it often enough and consistently enough that I build a new habit. Is that possible?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think like any skill, once you're moving from unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, unconscious competence, you start, you know, building those habits and patterns that create the healthy, unified culture. I mean, I don't have to stop and think anymore
Right, right.
about, am I being honest in what I say? Because I was 25 years old, true story, and I had to get up in front of a room of stakeholders and convince them that we didn't need to go here, we need to go here. And I was brainstorming this with some leaders that were older and wiser than me. And I was like, how are we going to convince them to give this up and to get this up and to take this? And my approach, not maliciously, but definitely was manipulative, because I didn't know how to live with my own truth and invite others into it. So what did I do? I received it when this guy in the room goes, maybe you should just try being honest with him. Be authentic. And Jimmy, I'm not embarrassed to tell you, because I have had to learn so many painful lessons over and over and over again. I sat there and I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, I remember it's like the first time I learned about win-win. I was like 23 and a friend chided me because I negotiated a deal too hard. And he was like, maybe you should try to be win-win. And I was like, win-win, that's a thing? Yes, that's a thing, you idiot. I'm like, wow,
Right.
that's awesome. So same thing with that, with us, but I don't have to think about that now. The authenticity becomes a ritual, a pattern, a rhythm. Another thing, and I could use like 17 examples of conflict resolution and deepening relationships, but here's another one. I'll throw something out there and go, any thoughts, questions, or concerns about that? Just making space, right? To
Right,
get their
right.
viewpoint. I don't have to actively work on that. I did for a long time. But yeah, so to answer the question, I think that's the cool part about it. The more you live out and practice, your ability to take people back to the vision, values, and strategy, work towards healthy relationships, all these are skills. I mean, we could list a bunch of skills that are under these that you don't have to just hyper specialize in one. You want, as a leader, a culture skill set that is robust so that you have what you need to move the culture forward. And
So
if you
it
move it,
sounds like you're
go
saying,
ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, brother. I interrupted you.
No, don't apologize, because I love it. I just get going.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is, you got vision, value, strategy, and then next is action. And it's just about living your vision, values, and strategy. It's about doing. And then also, of course, it sounds like you're saying, like you were, being open to being held accountable to it. So again, one of the things it sounds like you're saying the leader can do to support him or herself in building the culture is being open to being held accountable by those
Absolutely.
around them, regardless of their station in the organization.
Yeah, and you don't even have to use the words held accountable unless that's what the culture needs.
Unless it's a cultural value, right? Or
Yeah.
you want
Oh, but I would say this, if you want to move your culture forward, then it starts with, what's the culture I have?
right,
If
right,
I'm willing to accept the culture I have in every moment, when somebody says to me, maybe you should try being authentic, I'm accepting reality as it is. Oh, he doesn't think
right.
I'm being authentic. Am I not being authentic? I might not be. So I think, yes, you could use the word accountability, but that can sometimes cause some insecure leaders to feel threatened. I'm happy to say I'll make myself accountable to my children. If you think
Right.
I'm
Right.
acting like a fool, tell me. But I think some feel a little bit threatened by that word. And then some insecure leaders want to hold their leader accountable for the power trip they can go on. Um, and, you know, but I think if we
Right.
just say, yes, accountability, but yes, as a big umbrella term, growth. Are the people in the room passionate about growing as much as they can individually, developing the team as much as they can, and growing the organization as much as they can? Rock and roll.
Right.
Let's go. And if we
Gotcha.
run towards a vision and a values and strategy that takes us to the next step, it's going to also then test the relationships. And as it tests the relationships, what do you do next? Well, this is the really fun part. You're adaptive. You make changes. Vision and values and strategy enacted deepens relationships. As the relationships deepen, we get to changes. Now I do think most innovations tend to come from an individual. I don't want to lift this up as like a superstar at an organization. They carry all the weight. They're responsible for the innovation. I'm just saying they're either thinking and on their own and get a creative insight, or it's in a meeting and the friction is being discussed thoroughly in a beautiful way. And somebody goes, well, what about this? Um, so, so you
Right.
don't have to have a healthy atmosphere for innovation to happen. That's just what it is. That's why you have startups happen so much. People leave because they couldn't get it done there. But for a healthy culture, it's having space for being adaptive, because if you don't have space for being adaptive, then the work doesn't finish. And the simplest way to say, this in line with this whole big idea that culture's never done, you communicate the vision, values, and strategy. It drifts tomorrow. You work for healthy relationships, and tomorrow it has to be worked for again. And you've never found the best way to do anything. Whatever method you're using today that works so great, the minute you're attached to it, you're blocking yourself from future innovation. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to just embrace change in a way that is hapless and haphazard. You go, we just got to change for change's sake. A leader would never say that, but they just aren't able to sit with something long enough to see it be effective or test it. I'm not endorsing any of that, but I am saying until you really fully own, we've never found the best way to do anything, then your heart and mind aren't open for those new ways when they show up. Like somebody watching this could have a current meeting structure that they love, that they've developed for the current world we're living in, and their Zoom flow. And they just love it. And they think the team is taken care of and everybody's well led. And maybe they are. Maybe the team loves it. It's the best innovation for a meeting structure they've had yet. Great. Keep it until it's not working. And have an open mind that, yes, that was your idea. Yes, it was great, but you've never found the best way to do anything. And we need to find a better way to do it. An adaptive culture is open to that. Now, once you make that change because you've never found the best way to do anything, it disrupts the culture, and you got to accept it as it is. And you got to take it back to the vision, work for the health of the relationships, open to the innovation. And as we've worked with leaders, we've just seen they tend to struggle with one of these more than another. They tend to do one kind of natural. I know for me,
Right.
this part is for sure the least natural to me. I mean, I'm like, we were good yesterday. How are we not good today? I had an organization that I had poured heart and soul and blood and tears, and that is not exaggerating. I mean, literally, it was the highest sacrificial price I've ever had to pay for an organization, and it was in decline. We full on did a nosedive, rebuilt from the ashes, rebirthed, and started growing again. It was really exciting, and I did that for a number of years. And then I started making space for some other work. It was maybe say 10, 20%. This still had my dominating focus. But as I worked on this 10 to 20%, the team over here was bothered, felt
Right.
bothered. And it reached a head one day where I canceled going to an event and it was just a get together, but I just couldn't make it. And I had a couple of those team members express pain and frustration and irritation towards me. Now, I could have said, listen, you stupid fools, I've paid all this price. You get a paycheck because of this price that I've paid. But instead it was, how can I hear what they're saying and make a healthy decision from it? And the healthy decision for me from that was to go, I think it's time for me to go to this 10 to 20% and let it become the full thing. But as I look at this culture circle, I know that there was this little tendency in me to go, what? I've given you so much. How can you not be thankful? How can you not appreciate it? How can we have fractured relationships right now? Instead, understanding that this is a key part of the culture and this ground has to be taken every day. It was like, okay, I accept how they see this. It doesn't mean I have to punish myself for it. It doesn't mean I have to acquiesce and be a weak leader and go out and take any flagellation from them over it. Not that they would have done that, because they were beyond that as humans. But it does mean I have to evaluate, do I want to pay the price for advancing our culture, or am I supposed to move on? And for me in that moment, it became clear I was supposed to move on, and still friends with all of them, could reach out to any of them, still continual friends, super close to a couple of them. So it didn't end bad, but it was just acknowledging the culture shifts all the time. And it's
Mm.
our job to start with an awareness of accepting it and then find, what are we most likely to think? I can pave that parking lot and be done. I'll never have to do it again. Rather than understanding, you got to do it every day. Some of you, you're attached to your methods. It's hard for you here. Some of you, it's like, I freaking gave it to them in the onboarding sequence. I said it in the meeting every week. Well, if they're forgetting, it's your job to own it, not force feed them the culture you want them to have.
Right.
And that's, I think I'm not going to tell the story now, but I think about that with parents and telling their kids to clean their plates. And that's a power move that isn't the healthiest if you're a
Right.
leader.
Well,
Okay.
it
Go ahead.
and that, but it's also based on the parents' values, which are, you don't, you could be, for example, they're saying that because they don't want to waste food, or because but there's a value judgment that forces the parent to not be able to withhold that command. And I guess that brings me to a question for myself and for anybody who may be listening. It, the four components of your culture circle, the way you're talking about them, they seem like those are in and of themselves values that have to be cultivated in order to cultivate a culture. Is that possibly true?
Yeah. I mean, I've not thought about it that way, but I love that. I mean, you know, I would say it this way. You can have a culture and it not be healthy. Uh, this is an extreme example, but it's what's popping in my mind. Nazism is a culture that replicated itself powerfully, but it was an unhealthy culture because it didn't help the individual grow and develop in a healthy direction. It put the emphasis and focus on the tribal identity markers. So for me, and this is a powerful question, and I hope this, I can remember this question in my head every time I ever talk about culture. For me, I am offering a definition of a healthy culture. And
Mhm.
I do believe, and I think the research is there to show it. I think the trajectory of wisdom throughout thousands of years of human civilization shows it. So, but a healthy culture does not tell the individual who they should be for the sake of the group. The healthy culture helps the individual become an advancing, sustained, independent, interdependent, growing contributor to the whole. It's the responsibility of the team, the organization, the institution to help the individual grow and develop. And with owning that idea, with filtering through that idea, yes, these are some values-based culture markers. So you could give a neutral definition of culture that would not include this. This would be an action-based definition on what a healthy culture is. Does that answer that? I know I can get too deep on some of that stuff.
No, I think it's wonderful. I think there's, everybody that listens, including myself, comes with a different set of experiences and um, things that they've learned over time, right? So one of the interesting things that I experienced early in my career, in my current career, is I have a very good friend, Brad, who is involved in branding. And one of the things that I learned from him was I learned a really powerful definition of branding. And one of the definitions, has to do with, it's not what you say your brand is, it's how your customers experience you, which determines the brand. And I think I see parallel here with culture, right? It's not what you say the culture is, it's how people experience the culture. And so, if I think back to the story you told about the CEO who had uh, multiple sets of core values that he was living, which was creating confusion. And I'm thinking about the conversation I might have with him about his objective. And based on your answer, I'm thinking I might say, what do you want? And if his answer was, I want a healthy culture, then the first question I would ask would be something like, how do you feel about the role of acceptance as a core value here at this organization? And we might say, what do you mean? And I might explain it to him. And then my sense is that would have to happen first, that he would have to accept the idea of acceptance.
Mm.
My word is accountability, but without defensiveness, of course. Um, and I wonder, because if he's not willing to accept that, then then I would wonder how possible it is for him to make the shift and really get what he wants. Does that consistent with the way you would view that, or would you look at it
Thousand,
differently?
1,000%. And I would say that, like, you know, that's where people spin their wheels for years and years and years, because they have this strategy for how they want to move something and grow it, but the culture's eating that strategy. It's eroding it. It's tearing it down. And I don't see, you know, I don't see people really appreciating, not necessarily the people we work with, but just at large, how much culture is a lever to everything they're doing. It is, it's everything. I mean, even as a family, I want to be able to, that old thing where you stick your finger in the air and feel the wind. Um, I want to be able to put my finger in the air, put my finger in the soil, and know exactly what our culture needs. And
Right.
this helps me do that, because I can say, have we been communicating the vision? Have we been working towards unity? Do we need to change something? And something hit me this morning that I'm like, ooh, I need to address that, change that, because if not, I think we're gonna have a problem here. What about for you? If you look at this and say, the one that I would tend to think I would cross the finish line on and be done with, uh, might be which of these?
You mean the one that is the easiest for me to,
I'd love
or
to
the
hear that too, and the hardest.
well, I'll tell you what. I've been through. Uh, I consider myself a coach, and I've been through a lot of coaching, and I've had some amazing, amazing coaches in my lifetime, and coaches that they're so good that I doubt I'd ever find someone that good, which is, my belief, probably not true, but just some wonderful experiences. And when you talk about acceptance, um, one of the things I learned early on um, was this notion of resistance, and or um, and then this idea of toleration. So when I think about a culture, I feel like there's a lot of experiences that people within an organization or in a team tolerate and learn to tolerate. And it feels like your definition of acceptance is would be a tool for challenging those tolerations. So if I walked into a room of people that wanted to have a healthy culture, I would ask them just for a list of the things that they tolerate on a regular basis that exist in this organization. And it could be everything from off-color jokes to a lack of diversity, to a lack of appreciation, to as you mentioned earlier, this idea of, we say work-life balance matters, but you expect me to work at home, stay here late. We reward first in, last out, all that stuff. So I think the easiest thing for me then would be to really kind of delve into this concept of acceptance, just to start the conversation. To recognize as the North Star of any conversation that would initiate change within an organization, around an organization's culture.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that.
Seems powerful.
Go ahead. Yeah. I think,
This feels real powerful.
thank you. That's encouraging. I like to say a lot, like, you can figure out where your leadership needs to advance by just looking at what you're tolerating or avoiding. And so I think some people could hear the word acceptance and think I mean full acceptance of others, diversity and inclusion. And I do and I don't. I don't mean that if it means trying to make space for people that don't need to be on the team.
Right.
I do mean that if you think about, like, it's just accepting reality as it is. I'm stepping into this organization today. It's not the organization it was yesterday. This team as it is today. It's not the team it was yesterday. Where are they? What are they focused on? Is it the right thing? Are we connected? Did something happen in the last 24 hours? And are we finding the better way? And I find myself, just challenged by the fact that I might have been close with somebody yesterday, but today I have to re-communicate that warmth or my appreciation for them, So that's been for me where I've noticed the weakness that I can take for granted. I'm like, we were cool yesterday.
I'm with you on that. And if I think about the hardest part of this, even though, and I'm thinking about my clients, and we all have jobs to do. We all have goals we've committed to. We all have things that we're working toward. So whenever you're talking about something as big as culture, I understand. I understand, because I'm a human being. I think the same way. This idea of let's attack that and let's put a check mark next to it and move on, because there are lots of things we have to do. So I think this idea of being adaptive would be the most challenging thing, just because it means revisiting, and it means this thing is so important that it never goes away. Now, we could probably put a check mark next to it that we talked about it, but then we'd have to talk about it again, and we have to keep talking about it. So I'd probably have to find a way to make myself feel like I could put a check mark and complete a milestone related to it, but then I'd also have to build a mechanism into the way that I operate with my leadership team and with my people to make it a recurring conversation, so that we never get into a situation where we are missing turns or evolving in a way that is unhealthy and is going to ultimately cost us the growth that we seek and the goals that we seek. Because Drucker doesn't talk about things in the ethereal, euphemistic, theoretical way. Drucker talks about stuff that matters, right? So when he talks about culture eating strategy for lunch, it means that if you ignore it, it will impact your bottom line, your top line, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm seeing actually a reaction and a distancing from a lot of voices like Drucker, where there's a movement, even in the academic literature already, to appreciate more of a human-centric leadership model. It's kind of like, the Druckerisms got us here, they don't get us there, to the future of what humanity could become. And
Right.
I get the sentiment and agree in the sense that, shit, almost everything with leadership is solved. Be a good human. right? And if you need another definition, what would a good parent do? What would a healthy,
Right.
non-anxious, secure
Wonderful.
in who they are, mom or dad do? Do that. You know, even leaders that we've worked with that don't have kids can still get that idea. But I will say, as you think about what it means to be a human leader, shrinking it down to a template helps you zero in, and then you can amplify it, take it, make it better, right? Make it more nuanced, customize it for you. Just at least start somewhere, measuring yourself against who you can become rather than just where your personality will naturally drift, which is really just the defenses of your ego where you feel insecure.
Right.
And
Right.
because if you only build the culture around what you're good in and don't appreciate the parts that you're weak in, the worst people that you would prefer go will stay and the best will leave. You know, if you don't have a whole culture picture in place, if you're adaptive, you know, adaptivity, innovation produces the resources. The vision and the values produces the meaning. The unified produces the connection. And if you don't have these, the worst will stay, right? People, if you don't have an adaptive environment, people that can display a relational immaturity to coast, to stay in a place that they're lazy, that they don't have to reinvent.
Right.
The focused, if you don't have that, the immature are going to hijack with their agenda. The politically divisive here that feed on conflict will stay in the hallways, distracting people, wasting energy, whatever the Zoom hallways are now.
Right.
And but yet, if you're innovating, you got resources. And world-class talent wants resources to do great things. You're focused, you got the meaning. They want meaning. They don't want to waste their time. And they do it with people they enjoy, you know? And so for people that are watching this, it's like if that whole picture isn't in place, you can't do this out of your strengths. It's out of measuring yourself against a tool that you can challenge yourself to grow into what's next.
So Chris, let's help folks that are listening. So let's assume that not everyone listening is the CEO or the chief executive of their company, and they want to adapt and adopt some of what you've discussed here today themselves. How would someone who is a team member, a team leader, organization leader, how can people think about um, taking the lead on some of these things, even if they're not in a position to actually uh, transform an entire organization,
Beautiful.
or
Love it.
have the power to transform an organization?
First and foremost, keep an antenna dialed in for where leadership is going, what they're saying, what they want. I mean, it's even on you to read in between the lines. If it's painted on the wall, but they're valuing something different, ask, hey, I sense a discrepancy here. Which way do you want me to go with this? Okay, awesome. Let them define it. But it's on you to make sure you're moving in alignment with them. Now, if I were talking to the leader, I would say it's on you to communicate it. So weird little thing this summer. My daughter is working with me. My oldest, she's 17, and just with everything going on, didn't want her to have a job outside of the house. And so, you know, but to see her like come down and go, okay, I got those 6 clips. You wanted them all together, right? I was like, no, I wanted them all separate. That's my bad for not being clear about that. Like, I'm going to be a good leader and own that. It's my fault. I want her to be good also and say, I should have asked. I got a little. Then it's on the leader to work for relational unity. Are you an emotionally intelligent person? Do you know how to work for the good of the relationship? And can you be releasing of methods? And I think I'm about to lose my voice. I'm going to mute real quick and let you.
Well, so it sounds like for whoever is listening and whoever wants to be the agent for change, the first is to take personal responsibility for the change you seek, and just find a way to apply this circle. So I can imagine, even if I'm a team of 5 and I'm the only one who's got this idea, I can start working on myself, um, learning
Yeah.
what each of these 4 things means, and then possibly, um, by virtue of the experience, then you can become a more perhaps aggressive or a more assertive agent of change, which is actually what we're going to be talking about next time we do this. But yeah, I like that.
But you're exactly right. I mean, I have been in situations in my career where I jumped through what people would have said the ladder I would have had to have climbed would have been, because I had an eye for these. I knew how to, like, oh, this is where the vision's going. I'm most supportive of the leader when I support that direction. Oh, this is how I can work to keep relationships advancing. Oh, I'm attached to this method because it was my idea, or I'm seeing them struggle with this idea. I mean, really, it's, can you communicate? Can you see implications, second, third order, fourth order effects? Can you communicate? Emotionally intelligence for unified, and then for adaptive, do you understand change management? And when you can bring in an awareness of those, go study those topics, get crazy nerdy about it, start applying it, you become this multi-tooled asset. And it's so much fun, so much fun. Which I
Yeah.
love how you were talking about where that takes us next, because and you may not want to get into that yet. I got questions I can ask you on this. um
Either way, brother. Let's.
yeah, maybe one more. What's your favorite culture that you've ever been a part of, or worst? Which one draws out the most emotion for you?
Well, the my story. The first half of my career, I was the I was the professional gang member, so I was totally averse to team and culture. So I wouldn't have known. I only knew what I didn't like about every culture I was part of because I changed jobs every 2 years. But I could tell you the first thing I thought of when you asked me that question is a client of yours, actually. And I became exposed to this company in high school because everybody in my high school wanted to have an internship here, and it's Disney. And it was a big win for someone to be accepted into an internship at Disney because of the stories you heard about the culture and how they could find a way to balance everything, provide their customers with an amazing experience, promote innovation, and promote an environment where all the employees seem to be loving their job, fully realized, a chance to learn and to become better human beings. It's just, and in high school, I didn't believe it, right? That's on me. But that's the first company that came to my mind for many of the reasons that you talked about. Now, I have no idea if it's true. You would know better than me, but perhaps their growth is evidence of just how true that was.
That's inspiring. That's really cool. I think they're going to be an interesting case study to watch on what they do, because open the parks, shut the parks, open the parks, and the up and down of that, and movies postponed, and um, they're in a hard spot. um, and we'll see what their culture allows them to do. That's inspiring. That's really cool. Um,
How
what
about you?
for? Oh,
I
I was
stepped on your question.
no, I
Sorry.
love it. No, 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 no. Best and worst, or worst. I would say the best culture. I feel like right now, I've learned so much about culture building. I'm happy being me. I like being me. I like the people that I get to do things with. I feel like I don't have to hide or protect or overproject. So the best is now. It probably was, you know, best contrasted with the worst culture I was a part of, which was a very personal one, and one that, you know, I thought that some things were true about people that I loved, and as I worked with them, it was like, what? This is not who I want to be. Um, and it was a defining wake up call because I could see my life for the next 25 years, just play by play. And it was
Whoa.
terrifying,
Whoa.
terrifying to go, I am on that path. And that was for sure. I was already passionate about leadership, how the individual leader grows and develops. That was for sure, though, a galvanizing moment for how powerful the culture is and what it does. So I wish I could say more, but the best stuff can't be said when the mic is on and the recording is happening. Sadly. And I tend to be overly vulnerable in my stories. I mean, I talk about all kinds of my shit where I've punched a door in front of my family and lied to my neighbor about fixing my van and any other things you can imagine.
Yeah, and it's if we're honest, yeah, if I'm honest, and I do my best to be as well, be vulnerable. I have more negative stories. I do feel, though, to be fair to the folks that I worked with, I think a lot of my experience is based on what I brought to the table. Right? You 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 experience the world as you see yourself, and I looked at everyone that I worked with through the filter that I brought to the experience,
Yeah.
which was not positive. So, when as I was practicing that zero sum game every day, I, you know, I looked at or identified all the negative things around me. I think the thing that when people hear my stories about what it was like to work for 15 years in a series of venture backed, high growth organizations, they hear me talk about the dehumanizing elements of those organizations where you have a culture that's focused on one North Star, which is life changing money. And I loved that. I ran to that. And I couldn't understand people who didn't. Now I do, of course. Those folks, really probably recognize, many of those folks recognized the, that there was a part of them that wasn't worth compromising to make life changing money.
Mm.
And it wasn't more important than treating human beings with respect and thinking about developing those folks and looking at what they were doing holistically versus myopically.
Yeah.
So, we can get into that too, man. It would take another few of these episodes to get into.
Well, I think that as you share that, that's part of where your genius and strength shows up because it's getting it down to this very specific, practical level. The pain you've come through, what's been born, uh, through you into growth and helping people through those experiences. So I'm looking forward to our next session.
Nice. Yeah. That. Speaking of which, the next session is the fourth of the series,
Crazy.
and we're going to. Pardon me.
Oh, you said crazy that we're at that one already.
I know. What's cool about the session is it's going to wrap up with this idea of focus and this idea of taking action. So we've talked about leadership, we've talked about team, and we've talked about culture. Now it's time to think about how you as a leader can move to action. And move, when we say move to action, we mean this idea of taking the founding principle of growth multiplier, right? This idea that growth is the mastery of change. And how can you cultivate the mastery to understand which change to invest in, what changes to champion, and then how to bring people along with you on the journey that you feel is important. And so we'll get into a model that will help you think about that and hopefully add some value instantly to your own work experience.
Beautiful. I'm excited now. I'm especially even more excited because of yesterday. Uh, you and I were in front of this professional camera in this studio all day teaching for something we're going to be sharing with people coming up soon. So I don't want to give it too much away. I've still got a little bit of a teaching hangover from it, I think. It's a good feeling though,
Yeah,
because I know we did some good work. And I think the telling thing for me that was so fun, when you were going to be shooting your videos, I took some stuff to work on, and I couldn't work. I keep listening,
oh,
uh,
cool.
and I knew it was going to be good, but it kept pulling me in. So excited about that. Excited to be here with you today. Looking forward to the next one.
Me too, man. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank everybody for being here, and we're so glad to help serve in any way we can to help you multiply growth at every level. And we'll look forward to our next one. Peace out, everybody.
Take care.